I was sitting in my kitchen this morning when I realized something. The phone hadn't rung in 3 days. Not a single call. Not even one of those automated messages about car warranties or prescription refills. Just silence. And that's when it hit me. Really hit me for the first time. No one asks how I'm doing anymore. Not my daughter in Portland. Not my son in Michigan. Not the neighbors I've lived next to for 20 years. Somewhere along the way, I became the kind of person people stopped checking on. I'm not sure when it happened exactly. Maybe it was gradual. Like how you don't notice your hair turning gray until one day you look in the mirror and wonder when you became old. I sat there with my coffee getting cold, looking at that silent phone on the counter, and I wondered how I got here. How does a person go from being at the center of everything to being someone people forget about? I used to be the one everyone called. When there was a problem, they called me. When there was good news, they called me. When they just needed someone to listen, they called me. Now the phone sits there like a piece of furniture. Decorative. Useless. My name is Robert Mitchell, and I'm 73 years old. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Same house I bought with my wife Margaret 46 years ago. Same kitchen where we raised 2 kids. Same living room where we hosted Thanksgiving for 30 years straight. Same bedroom where Margaret died 4 years ago last October. The house hasn't changed much. I haven't changed much either, at least not on the outside. But something's different now. The silence is louder. The rooms feel bigger. And nobody asks how I'm doing anymore. I think about this a lot these days. How did I end up here? I worked hard my whole life. 38 years at the implement dealership, selling tractors and combines to farmers who trusted my word. I was good at my job. Honest. Fair. I showed up early and stayed late. I provided for my family. Put both kids through college. Never missed a mortgage payment. I did everything right, the way my father taught me. Keep your head down. Work hard. Don't complain. Be strong. That's what men did. That's what fathers did. I thought I was doing it right. Margaret used to say I was a good man, but a quiet one. She'd say it with a little smile, like it was both a compliment and a gentle criticism. I never knew quite what to make of that. I wasn't much for long conversations, that's true. I figured actions spoke louder than words. I fixed things around the house before anyone asked. I brought home a steady paycheck. I never raised my voice or caused trouble. What more did people need? But Margaret would sometimes look at me across the dinner table with this expression I couldn't quite read, like she was waiting for something. I never knew what. Our daughter Emily was like her mother. Sensitive, talkative, always wanting to know what I was thinking or feeling. I didn't understand why it mattered so much. I was thinking about work, about bills, about fixing the fence or changing the oil in the car. Normal things. But she'd ask me these questions that seemed to have no answers. How do you feel about that, Dad? What do you think about what I just said? Do you ever worry about things? I'd give her honest answers. I feel fine. I think you should do what you think is best. Everyone worries sometimes. But she looked disappointed, like I'd missed something important. I never understood what. My son David was easier. He was more like me. Practical. Not much for emotional conversations. We could spend an afternoon working on his truck together, hardly saying a word, and it felt good, comfortable. That's how men communicated, I thought, through doing things together, through being present without needing to fill every silence with words. But even David started pulling away after college. He got married, moved to Michigan for a job in Ann Arbor. We talk on the phone maybe once a month, brief conversations about weather and work. Nothing deep. Nothing uncomfortable. That seemed fine to me. Normal. He had his own life now. That's what kids do. They grow up and move on. After Margaret got sick, things started changing in ways I didn't recognize at first. She had breast cancer. It came back after being gone for 10 years. The doctors said it was aggressive this time. She handled it better than I did, honestly. She was calm about it. Practical. She made lists of things that needed to be done. She organized all our papers and accounts. She even planned her own funeral, down to the hymns and the flowers. I didn't want to talk about any of it. What was there to say? She was dying. Talking about it wouldn't change that. So I stayed busy. I fixed everything in the house that had been waiting for years. I cleaned out the gutters. I painted the garage. I reorganized the basement. I thought I was being helpful, staying strong for her, not falling apart. But one night, about 2 months before she died, Margaret asked me to sit with her. Just sit. She was in bed, too weak to do much anymore, and she patted the space next to her. I sat down, awkward, not sure what she wanted. She took my hand, which felt strange because we weren't really hand-holders, never had been. She looked at me with those tired eyes and said something I've thought about every day since. She said, "Robert, I don't know what you're feeling right now, and that makes me sad. After all these years, I still don't know how to reach you." I didn't know what to say to that. I told her I loved her. I told her I was going to miss her. But even as I said the words, they felt inadequate somehow. Like they were the right words, but delivered in the wrong language. She squeezed my hand and said, "I know you do. I've always known that. But loving someone and letting them know you isn't the same thing." Then she closed her eyes, and we sat there in silence until she fell asleep. I didn't understand what she meant, not really. Not then. I thought I had let her know me. We'd been married for 42 years. We'd raised kids together, bought a house together, survived all the normal struggles of a long marriage. What more was there to know? But that conversation stayed with me. It bothered me in a way I couldn't name. After she died, the kids came home for the funeral. Emily cried a lot. David was stoic like me. They stayed for a few days, helped me sort through some of Margaret's things, made sure I knew how to work the washing machine and where all the important documents were. They were kind, attentive, but there was something careful in how they treated me, like I was fragile or might break if they said the wrong thing. Before Emily left, she hugged me at the door and said, "Dad, call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I'm here for you." I nodded and said I would, but we both knew I probably wouldn't. That wasn't how I operated. I'd managed fine my whole life. I didn't need people worrying about me. The first year after Margaret died was strange, but manageable. People from church brought casseroles. Neighbors checked in occasionally. The kids called every week or two. I settled into a routine. I kept the house clean. I cooked simple meals. I watched the news and went to bed early. I thought I was doing fine, but gradually, the calls became less frequent. The neighbors stopped coming by. The casseroles stopped appearing on my doorstep. Life moved on, the way it does. People had their own problems, their own busy lives. I understood that. I didn't want to be a burden, so I didn't reach out. I didn't call Emily just to chat. I didn't ask David to visit more often. I figured they had enough to worry about without adding me to the list. But here's what I didn't realize, what took me years to understand. While I was trying not to be a burden, I was also making it impossible for anyone to care about me. I had spent my whole life being the strong one, the one who didn't need help, the one who had everything under control. And I'd done such a good job of it that everyone believed me. They believed I was fine. They believed I didn't need them. And so, slowly, they stopped asking, not because they didn't care, but because I'd never given them permission to care. I'd never let them in. I'd never shown them that I was human, that I struggled, that I needed connection just like everyone else. I had built walls so high and so thick that nobody could see over them anymore. And now I was sitting alone inside those walls, wondering why nobody was knocking on the door. The turning point came about 6 months ago. I had a small accident, nothing serious, but it shook me up. I was changing a light bulb in the hallway, standing on a step stool that was older than my kids, and I lost my balance. I fell backwards, landed hard on my hip. For a few minutes, I just lay there on the floor, stunned, trying to catch my breath and figure out if anything was broken. Nothing was, thankfully, just bruised and sore. But as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, a terrible thought came to me. What if I had broken something? What if I couldn't get up? How long would it take before someone found me? The kids wouldn't check on me for days, maybe a week. The neighbors hadn't knocked on my door in months. I could lie here for days, maybe longer. Nobody would know. Nobody would come. I managed to get myself up eventually, took some aspirin, put some ice on my hip. But that thought stayed with me. The loneliness of it, the reality of it. I had built a life where nobody knew what was happening to me anymore. Not because they were bad people, but because I'd made it that way. I started paying attention after that. Really paying attention. When Emily called, which wasn't often anymore, I noticed how our conversations went. She'd ask how I was doing. I'd say fine. She'd tell me about her kids, her job, something happening in Portland. I'd say that sounds nice, or that's good, or some other bland response that meant nothing. Then we'd run out of things to say, and she'd make an excuse to get off the phone. The conversations lasted maybe 5 minutes. There was no connection there, no real exchange of anything meaningful, and I realized it was my fault. I'd trained her over decades that I didn't want to talk about feelings or problems or anything deeper than surface level. So she'd stop trying. When David called, it was even shorter. A quick check-in. Yep, I'm fine. How are you? Good. Okay, talk to you later. Click. These weren't relationships. These were obligations. Check marks on a list. Call Dad. Done. I thought about all those years when the kids were growing up. How many times had Emily tried to talk to me about something that mattered to her, and I'd been too tired or too distracted or too uncomfortable with emotional conversations to really listen? How many times had I shut down a conversation with a simple answer when she was looking for connection? How many moments had I missed because I thought being strong meant being silent? I thought about Margaret and that conversation we had before she died. I don't know how to reach you. God, that hurt to remember. My wife for 42 years, and she felt like she couldn't reach me. What kind of husband does that make me? What kind of father? What kind of person? I started making changes, small ones at first. When Emily called, I asked her real questions. Not just how are the kids, but what's it like being a mother to teenagers in today's world? What makes you happy these days? What worries you? At first, she seemed surprised. Suspicious even. Like she wasn't sure if I really wanted to know, or if I was just being polite. But I kept at it. I told her things too. Little things I'd never bothered to mention before. That I'd been thinking about her mother a lot lately. That the house felt too big sometimes. That I missed having people around. Nothing dramatic. Just honest. And something started to shift. Our conversations got longer. She started calling more often. Not out of obligation, but because we were actually talking to each other. With David, it was harder. He was more like me, more guarded. But I tried. I told him about falling off the step stool, which I hadn't mentioned to anyone. I told him it had scared me, that getting older was harder than I had expected. There was a long silence on the phone, and I thought maybe I'd said too much, made him uncomfortable. But then he said, Dad, I worry about you out there alone. I just never knew if he wanted me to say that. We talked for an hour that day. It was awkward at times. Neither of us is skilled at this kind of conversation. But it mattered. It felt real. I'm not fixed now. I'm not suddenly surrounded by people or living some different life. I still live alone in Cedar Falls. I still have quiet days and long evenings. But the phone rings more often now. Emily calls twice a week. David came to visit last month and stayed for 3 days. We talked more in those 3 days than we had in the previous 3 years. I've started going to the coffee shop downtown on Tuesday mornings, where a group of retired guys meet to talk about nothing important. I joined because I realized I needed to be around people, even if it was just to complain about the weather or discuss the local high school football team. I've learned to say yes when people ask if I need anything. I've learned to ask for help sometimes. I've learned that being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone. Here's what I understand now, at 73, that I wish I'd understood at 30 or 40 or 50. Connection requires vulnerability. People can't care about you if you won't let them see you. And being seen means admitting you're not always fine. You don't always have it together. You need people just like everyone else. I spent so many years believing that needing others was weakness. That asking for help was failure. That showing emotion was unmanly. I was wrong about all of it. The strongest thing I've done in my life wasn't working 38 years without complaining or keeping a stiff upper lip when things got hard. The strongest thing I've done was admitting to my kids that I was lonely, that I needed them, that I didn't want to be the kind of father they felt obligated to call but didn't want to. No one asks how I'm doing anymore. That's how this started. That thought in my kitchen with the silent phone. I realize now that's not quite true. People do ask. Emily asks. David asks. The guys at the coffee shop ask. My neighbor Tom asked me just yesterday if I wanted to come over for dinner sometime. The difference is I answer now. Really answer. And when people answer honestly, others keep asking. When you let people in, they want to stay. It took me 73 years to learn that. I can't get back all those years I wasted keeping people at a distance. I can't undo the loneliness Margaret must have felt, married to a man she couldn't reach. I can't give Emily and David a different father when they were growing up, one who talked to them about more than grades and chores. But I can do better now. I can be different now. And maybe that's the lesson, if there's one. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to admit you were wrong, to ask for forgiveness, to start doing things differently. The people who love you are usually willing to meet you halfway, if you'll just be honest about where you are and what you need. Pride is a lonely companion. I kept it close for most of my life, and it cost me more than I realized. These days, I'm learning to let it go. I'm learning to be the kind of person others want to check on, not because I'm needy or broken, but because I'm real with them, because I let them matter to me, and I let myself matter to them. That's all any of us really wants, I think. To matter to someone, to be seen, to be known. I have some of that now. Not enough to make up for lost time, but enough to make the days feel less empty. Enough to make the phone ring sometimes. Enough to remind me that I'm still here, still part of the world, still connected to the people I love. That's something. After all these years of silence, that's really something.